Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Trends Talk. I'm Sarah Sladek, your host. We've been doing Trends Talk for an entire year now. We launched this in January 2024, and I'm excited to say this is our 12th, our last of the year. And pretty soon, here in the next week, you're going to see our own yearbook coming out, XYZ University's Trends Talk yearbook. We're going to include little snippets and takeaways from all of our conversations year round. So stay tuned for that. And I am excited to be joined today by Erin Fuller, who is the Chief Strategy Officer for MCI USA, which is a global marketing and engagement firm. And gosh, I don't recall when I met Erin first, but we were a whole heck of a lot younger at the time. And and I've known her for many years. She's such an amazing leader, and she loves to be on the cutting edge. And she's currently on the cutting edge of AI. I just went to one of her workshops. It was fascinating. And I'm excited to delve into this topic, which is top of everyone's mind. So welcome to the show, Erin.
Thank you, Sarah. It's so happy to be here and happy anniversary.
Well, thank you. All right, fantastic. Let's dive in. We do this in 5 rounds. So round 1, what is the question? All right, Erin, what current stat or data point best summarizes the need for organizations to prioritize AI?
Great question. I think, at this point, it's probably the easiest stat. This comes from Statista, that basically for every year in delay you take in delaying AI adoption in your organization, there could be as much of an impact of 5 years of business development or revenue loss. So that's kind of the simple stat. I will say, if people are looking to be compelling to their staff, teams, or boards. I also just posted some research in there. I really like this research. It's a collaborative effort between BetterUp, that does coaching, professional coaching, as well as SSIR, the Stanford Center for Research. And they do this great research on pilots versus passengers. And I think, Sarah, the workshop you were at this summer, I talked about this a little bit, which is basically we're at a point where about 28% of people feel super optimistic and ready to be immersed in AI, and 29% say that they're incredibly resistant, less capable, and fearful of it. And this study basically calls people pilots and passengers. Pilots power your business. They just tend to be more innovative anyway. They tend to be early adopters, risk takers. And because they have that engine of AI behind them, they're 3.5% more, 3.5 times more productive than everybody else in the organization. So the more people we can shift to that pilot mode, only 28% now, if you even double that, knowing you're never going to pull everybody into new tech right away, you can have a real outsized impact on the organization, which is why I am so passionate about this topic. I just think there's so much potential there, and people need to go probably beyond having AI deal with kind of just some basic administrative tasks to kind of some next level stuff, which we can talk about in some other questions.
Yes. And Erin, maybe you want to just provide for our audience a little overview before we go to the next round of how long you've been working on mastering AI. Just like, did you just jump in? What's your transition been?
Well, Sarah, it reminds me a little bit of when I graduated college in the early 90s, and I had a whole bunch of my friends who became webmasters, which that title tells you all you need to know. And they all had degrees in political science and communications, et cetera, because there was no training for kind of web coding and development at that point. I think AI, we're kind of at that point right now. And I think my 2 teen children would laugh if they hear me talked about me being talked as a tech expert of any kind. But I think because it's driven via a language model, for me, that made sense right away. I've hit my mid 50s and never learned how to code very well. And I feel like I dodged that bullet, and now AI can kind of do that for me. But the ability to kind of be on the front end of this is really appealing. I'm really lucky that MCI globally, we've invested a tremendous amount, including mandating that all of our talents, our 2,000 talents globally, are certified in generative AI. We've also invested, we're early adopters into Copilot, full Copilot integration. And so we've been really not just a couple people in the company, but really expecting everybody in the company to be proficient in using AI. We had an AI Olympics over the summer where we had people kind of hacking problems via AI. And we try to, on a monthly basis, do that. And so I'm excited to be kind of the AI czar, at least in the US, helping our talents access tools that make them kind of smarter, stronger, and more effective.
I love the AI Olympics idea. And
Yeah.
I hope if you're in the audience, you're kind of asking yourself, am I a pilot or a passenger on this journey?
Mhm.
And what does that mean for me and for our organization? And before we go to round two, I also just want to say you are welcome to type in some questions. You may be watching this on the Big Marker platform. You may be watching this on LinkedIn because we are streaming this live and we have people watching over there as well. So, all right, let's go to round two. Okay. Fantastic. Erin, how is AI likely to change how we live, work, and do business in the next year? We're at year end 2024. If we were talking year end 2025, what's going to be different? What are your predictions?
Gosh, well, I think first of all, if you think you've dodged AI somehow, it's impossible, right? It's really truly embedded into anything, unless you're truly off grid, in which case you're not watching this webinar. So I think that a lot of people probably aren't even aware of how AI is just driving so many of the algorithms, so much of kind of the multimodal AI tools that we have at our disposal. I think that the kind of from a macro perspective, AI is expected to drive job creation. So there's a lot of talk about, oh my gosh, AI is going to come and kind of take these jobs. I would argue that the jobs that AI may replace are not necessarily great jobs, and we can channel talent into doing different things. I think one of the things I remind people of a little bit is, I used to spend a lot of time standing by a fax machine, staring at it, willing it to print out pages, right? And I don't have to do that anymore, and my time can be spent differently. And I think that when we think about within the association world, those info at boxes and the ability, for instance, to leverage an AI assistant to help us kind of get through member service issues, there's real potential there. I think that what we're seeing, I think the trend is hopefully in 24, people became more adept or comfortable, or at least familiar with leveraging AI to step in and do some searches through their email boxes, or drafting a difficult email, or helping outline a difficult conversation, kind of one-off tasks. I hope in 25, the trend is that we really see people integrating different tools to tackle much more complex problems. So I've been using AI, for instance, in strategic planning with some organizations. There's an ability to really have different types of AI, different media that can be fed into AI, do some really transformative things. So hopefully we're going from giving people maybe a longer coffee break to some real time saved. So I think to me, that's the biggest trend, is kind of this evolution of folks jumping in. The flip side of that is always we created a deeper divide, right? So we've been talking about the digital divide, it feels like, for decades, Sarah, not to date how long we have known each other. But I think that with the AI divide, like, that's going to be a biggie. I think that we're going to see an increasing divide of people who are able to harness AI and be more productive, and have people let go of kind of this this kind of unuseful approach of, like, if I don't craft something myself, it doesn't count, right? I think that that's going to be kind of left in the dust a little bit with people's thinking.
It's so interesting, as someone who loves to create content and write books and do research. I have mixed feelings about all of it. There are pieces that I think to myself, oh, this would be so much easier. And then there are pieces that I think, wait a second.
Yeah, I mean, you're still going to need that human layer, where there's no question that, I would argue that I'm so happy that I can have AI do a pass at the first draft for me. As a writer, sometimes that first draft is what you're just staring at, that blinking, whatever the blinking cursor is equivalent now, and so having kind of some material is really helpful for me. Having kind of more kind of, I guess, clay to mold from, et cetera. For me, at least my style is really helpful. I don't think AI has generated 100%, certainly of anything I've done, but sometimes for me, getting that first pass done, the search functionality, as someone who uses Copilot within the Microsoft suite, the ability for it to search everything, like every document, every email, every Teams chat, that is gold. I mean, we all have spent what feels like hours trying to find that one thing, and
Yeah.
AI kind of understands. So I do think that there's potential there, but I can appreciate creatives, and I use that term, whether you're a designer or a writer or just someone who leverages your ability to think creatively and be a problem solver, being concerned about that. I don't think that's where I don't think AI is taking any CEO or CSO jobs. I don't think that's where we're seeing it. Where we're going to see it is kind of the bottom of the pyramid, the stuff that takes a lot of time but is probably low value. That's what I hope to see, at least.
Yes. All right. I'm seeing some questions come in, but we're going to hold and get
Okay.
through the main questions. Then we'll take audience questions.
Mhm.
Let's go to round three. All right, round three. AI is a new skill set. What's it take for an organization to master or leverage it?
So I think that, as I said before, you've got 20 to 28% of people on your team that probably were already using it. There was a great study by LinkedIn that's a year old now. And so it's a little dated, but at the time they asked it, probably 6 months ago, it basically said that 80% of people had used AI, at least the majority of days in the prior week, but only 30% of the people felt comfortable telling their boss they had done it, right? So we have to get rid of a little bit of this stigma. It's like not dirty or forbidden, right? To use AI, it's okay. So that's great. You're going to have people who are always going to be on the front, kind of pulling everybody else along. But for the majority of talents on a team, whether your team is 3 people or 300, you've got to invest in some training. And there's a lot of great resources out there. I would say, I would say our friends at Sidecar actually have had a great boot camp, not affiliated at all, but I will say that I jumped in, had a great experience with that. I really appreciate kind of the rigor that they took to that approach. I think that they're running those and would highly recommend that. LinkedIn has a baseline Gen AI free access class to take. You have to invest in some education here. The tools have so much potential and so much capacity. I'm sitting in every other week a class right now just to make sure I'm keeping up on the developments that are happening on the Microsoft side of the house.
Wow.
So I think the investment in training has to be the number one. But you've got to create the compelling reason to adopt it. You've got to sell this to people for whatever reason. And I'm not seeing it on an age basis necessarily. I'm seeing people who are later in their tenured career who are enthusiastic adopters. I'm seeing AI Luddites on the other side of the age spectrum there. So somehow there has to be a compelling reason. And really, I always say it's a little bit like close-up magic. I have to show people in real time how AI can do something that we all hate doing. I think, Sarah, I used the example of open text boxes and surveys, which is everybody's nightmare, right? And the ability for AI, for instance, to take those and give you the takeaways right away. Nobody was looking forward to taking a full day to parse through and separate out the comments about how cold the room was and the salad dressing and like the really substantive content oriented feedback that's really helpful as you're planning moving forward. So I would say training, demonstrating the impact, and really as an organization, whatever industry or profession you represent, figuring out also how AI is impacting that profession or industry, because a lot of times your members rely on the association to be ahead on this content side. And so it's going to be really important, even if you're like, oh, my members run a very kind of analog kind of business. I still think it's incumbent on association professionals to be up to speed on those kind of things to help lead their members forward.
And I'm curious to know, because you referred to yourself as the AI czar earlier. And I'm curious to know, it's like all this training and all this, is this kind of a shift in your job role, or is this a company shift, or is this a Erin Fuller, I want to do this type of initiative? Just curious.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of those. I certainly want to give MCI a lot of credit. We've truly been early adopters with AI in terms of, and I think that we've really backed that up, not just with like, hey, go use AI, although that's important. I think that permission is really important with these tools, but also our investment, our assessment of tools. We have a whole protocol of how we look at how we protect. We have nearly 2,000 clients, so the need for us to protect client data is important. We are headquartered in Geneva, so GDPR and privacy is even more strict for us across the board. And we've invested in Sana, which is an AI-driven learning management system. And our ability, I think we've created 2,500 new courses this year. I was just reading some stats today. So the ability for us to see internally how AI can impact our talents and how we work, I think has benefits to our clients. But I think my role as chief strategy officer is, for our U.S. team of 350 folks and 5 offices in the U.S. is definitely to try to look ahead and get out a little bit from the day-to-day kind of client work and be strategic. And I think that this tool helps us really show our innovation, but then also, most importantly, helps drive our clients in terms of the partnerships and the innovation there.
Right, right. Okay, fantastic. Let's go to the next question.
All right.
All right. And round 4. What are 3 facts about AI that most people probably don't realize or know?
I think the first one is that, as I said, like you're already using it, right? So kind of like Intel inside, right? AI is inside. So every time you're navigating and you have a map that's telling you the way to go based on traffic predictions, right? That's AI leveraged. We all have, I have smart speakers. We have all of these, different things. I think most of us just saw our Spotify Wrapped for this year, and we know that the Spotify algorithm has always been kind of creepily good at predicting what we'd like to listen to. I think it's even more so as a result of AI. And then, I also say if you're Googling something, you're using AI, right? We all see it now when we Google or we Bing or what have you, we see an AI summary that's happening automatically unless you toggle that off. So I think that's, people are starting to kind of see the benefits of that, which is really nice, right? I mean, I think a lot of times we Google something and our old mentality was, okay, I'm gonna have to look at the first 3 things, make sure it's not sponsored, make sure it's coming from, all of those digital literacy pieces are really important. But having the AI do kind of an aggregation of that, I think has been a helpful first step. The second tool is just understanding AI's current and potential impact on kind of huge mega global issues, like climate change in terms of really regulating energy, using AI to really specifically apportion out limited energy resources, predicting sea level rise, all of these things. And when you feed kind of any large model into AI, we're getting faster and smarter data. And I think a great perspective on that too is that AI has been shown on the healthcare side to be a much better prescriber than human beings, right? So when you think about prescription, that's all math in a lot of ways, right? It's age, it's weight, it's other kind of test indicators. And so when we think about medical professionals and most of the health impacting or life impacting errors that happen on the medical side are around prescription misdosing. And so the ability for medical professionals to have access to something like that, we actually will see and we're seeing lives being saved as a result, which is really remarkable. And the third thing is just a reminder that AI learns from us. It learns from real life examples, which means that data sets are really crucial for training AI models. And so when you think about that from an association point of view, so AI is trained by the internet, which we know is like a dumpster fire of, misogyny and all sorts of things, like all of the biases that take place in our lives take place on the internet and sometimes more so. So the ability for associations, for instance, to make sure when I search for an image of an accountant, I don't see a white man fed back to me, right? That I see actually a much more representative image of an accountant, which would be female, which would probably be bi or multiracial, which would probably be younger than the image that was sent back, just looking at the demographics of accountants right now. It's a great example of how, and that's a simple one, but you can kind of think about how you would expand that. And there are definitely opportunities for associations to be really intentional in the information, the data, the imagery that they're putting out there to make sure that the AI is trained appropriately on the profession or the industry that they serve.
Interesting. It's all so fascinating, right? And I think when we talk about kind of the dark side of AI and
Mhm.
that yes, it's still learning, it is biased, it's not always the best representation. Any other tools or little tidbits you can pass along on how to does that just simply mean you have to be really clear in your prompts that you give AI, or how do you take that
Mhm.
into consideration when you're trying to utilize AI that it does have its biases?
Right. I think, well, sometimes, it's first of all, I recommend that everybody has a paid version of whatever AI tool you're using, whether that's chat, whether you are leveraging a Copilot license along on top of your Microsoft suite. Always making sure that you are enabling privacy and you're protecting your client data. But we don't need to be too precious about it, right? A lot of the stuff unless you're putting your whole membership database in, don't do that. And if you do that, make sure it's in a work only kind of playground for you to use that information. Certainly, you wouldn't want to put that out in the public domain. But there is an opportunity for you to turn those privacy things off, right? And make sure you could be really intentional about pushing. And so you could say, this is a data set about accountants. I would love for you to make sure that you literally talk to AI like it's a person, right? I would love for you to put this out there so that this informs research and results related to the accounting profession. You can just write that as a prompt within chat, within Copilot, and put it out there. And so I think associations are going to have a strategy of first, right now, we've all been like, oh my gosh, we've got to protect privacy and client data. And we should be risk managers first. But now we can't be so risk averse that we're not strategic in terms of what information do we want to have out there so that when we pull an image of, for instance, a 53-year-old woman, we don't see a woman that looks like they could be my grandmother, right? So the AI age bias and imagery is really shocking, right? So I use those as a kind of easy examples to reach for, but every association and profession has that. We work with a number of library-based organizations. The librarian profession is, and the information professionals are some of the most diverse, highly educated people you'll ever see, right? High LGBTQ population, very, very racially and ethnically diverse, right? When we think of a librarian, we don't necessarily see that reflected. So the ability of some of these organizations to update some of those stereotypes by really pushing some of the information into AI could be, I think, a really interesting opportunity.
Absolutely. I see a question that came in from Regina. What AI tool did you use for strategic planning?
Yeah. So a couple things. I think this is a great example of kind of what multimodal AI, which is, I think, something you'll be hearing that phrase a lot more in 2025. But what we did is, first of all, the environmental scanning, we went ahead and put a lot of that into AI. So I was able, as we all know, preparing for strategic plan, we think about that iceberg, right? All of the work that's kind of under the water is doing that scanning, parsing it down. And so the ability for me to take kind of every survey that the organization had administered in the past 2 years, put it into AI and say, okay, what are the themes that are coming out of that? If this organization wants to reach more younger members, can you pull kind of the feedback there? So you can kind of use AI as your assistant to really drive that. So that was really helpful. So that's just using chat or something similar. Again, paid version, lockdown on privacy. And then what I have been using with groups is, if we have the space, is to use either Teams or Fireflies or another tool that records conversations. So when you think about usually within strategic planning, you're breaking people up by demographics or areas of interest or expertise. And then you have kind of a human note taker there. We all know that the note-taking role is the worst job. It means that you're a scribe, you're not able to participate. It usually goes to either like the youngest person at the table or a woman, et cetera. And so I think that this is actually a great equalizer, is to use kind of some of these conversation capture and then be able to very quickly summarize. So you can catch everybody in the room out with the outcomes of each conversation. You can integrate all of the conversations and say, what were some of the things that everybody talked about? What were some of the things that only one conversation talked about? So to me, that's so helpful, because I think that that's always a real challenge with planning. And then instead of the flip charts, and we all know how many flip charts, it's almost like we wear as a badge of honor. The more kind of pieces of paper cluttering the room, the more successful we've been. But the ability to have everything captured and ready to get out to people same day on the results and next steps for strategic planning helps, I think, also speed up the process. So there's no one system, Regina, that I used, but it was a series of tools, most of which are very accessible, probably some of which you're already paying a subscription for, that can be really successful. To me, the only thing that can be a barrier is kind of, if you're all in one big room, the ability for the AI to do speech capture can be a little bit limited. It'll be interesting to see how some of that drives space use and design moving forward as well.
All right, great. All right, we have 2 questions left and we have 5 minutes.
Okay.
So we have to do speed round here,
All
Erin.
right.
All right. So Jolene says, with the advent of email, we were promised more time. However, email introduced an entirely new paradigm of work. We all know about those cluttered email boxes. Do you think AI will create more work or help reduce it? And if it reduces, could the impact lead to shorter work weeks? Could we be moving towards work-life balance, which up to this point has felt more like a myth? Such a heavy question, a good question.
That's a lot. Ooh, okay. Well, yeah, I think, the advent, and I know we have a few minutes left. It's a great question. I think, I'm lucky enough, I guess, that I've seen all of these modalities of work, right? I used to come in and get my stack of while you were out messages that I would take the first 2 hours of every day calling people back, right? So now who leaves a voicemail anymore? And so I do think we've always had this kind of admin communication management work that has to be done. And I do think that AI is effective with that. So I do think that will help streamline that. And I also agree that then what will be the unintended consequence of some of that, right? Will we now, what jobs will be created, et cetera, as a result? I'm not sure about that, but I can say that I do have Copilot turned on in my email box. It is very, very good at helping me prioritize which ones I should see. I have it at the end of each day, ping me to file things away to kind of keep my inbox uncluttered, as kind of a concrete example of that. I think it will reduce it. In terms of the approach to a shorter work week, et cetera, I don't know. I mean, gosh, think about the technology we've seen launch over the however many years. I will say, though, as someone who commuted as a single parent with 2 small children for a long time, I value the fact that now the expectations of where I am are not really a factor into what I can do and how I can perform. And so I think about the advantages we have with platforms like this and our use of Teams or Zoom, et cetera, and how commonplace that is now. So we weren't able to predict that. We had a pandemic that probably spurred our tech development, each of us on an individual level, 10-fold, 20-fold. So will AI kind of drive this next iteration of work? I think that that's highly probable. Absolutely. And as for work-life balance, I think that that's just, that is a story we tell ourselves. I think it's magical thinking. I think, though, that I've been very lucky to have a job that's allowed me to have work-life integration, and my ability to kind of toggle back and forth between the two is what I'm almost at empty nest stage as a result, successfulthis. So that's good.
Fantastic. So we're going to go to our final question, very important one, round 5. And this is a speed round once again. What trends are you currently watching and advising others to prepare for?
All right, 2. I've got just 2. So the first one, I know I keep on saying this, but this multimodal approach. So when I say that, it sounds complex about a complex topic, but it's kind of like your ability. It leverages, it's when AI can leverage video, photos, the ability to search the web, and your conversation all at the same time. So you have a sad plant on your windowsill and you're able to snap a picture and ask AI, why am I killing this plant? And, and the AI can ask you questions of, do you travel a lot? How cold is it, your climate, et cetera. At the same time, it's analyzing the picture all at once to kind of present you with a diagnosis and a course of action. We can think about multimodal AI as kind of a Swiss Army knife. We're a Swiss company, so that's a great example, where there's just going to be different tools that you're using depending on what you need it for. You're probably already doing that using, say, Midjourney for imagery versus chat for kind of agent creation. I think increasingly we're seeing the tools kind of do everything all at once. So that's the one big trend, multimodal. And then the second one would be the focus on ethical AI. The regulation and the impact of AI on various industries is going to be really critical this year as everyone has a better understanding, I think, Sarah, to your point, of what it can do, and both kind of the creepy and scary side of that as well as the exciting. we're going to see a lot more, I think, more sophisticated conversations around what does that really mean? What does ethics mean in different industries? It's very different things. When you layer that along with a pretty dynamic geopolitical environment, I think that becomes really hard, really, really fast. So I think that that's going to create a lot of really interesting conversations to have with our boards and committee leadership over the next year.
Erin, thank you for being here on Trends Talk. I hope that all of you listening in are now making your New Year's resolutions to adopt more AI. I know I am. And since you mentioned the geopolitical, we have a second event coming up in half an hour called Power at the Polls, where we will hear from some Gen Z panelists. So we're going from trends into another trend, really talking about some of those political trends. I'm Sarah Sladek. Thank you for joining us for Trends Talk. We'll see you next year.